The story of Cuba is one that has some special characteristics. The strongman of Cuba, Batista, happened to be visiting the United States in November 1938 and met with Roosevelt in the White House 2 days after the Night of Broken Glass. Batista had his own agenda. He wanted a reduction of the American tariff on Cuban sugar. And Roosevelt, or people close to Roosevelt, had their agenda, which was to get Cuba to do something about Jewish refugees.
After meeting with FDR, the strongman of Cuba, Batista, announces that he is willing to cooperate with the initiative of the great American President Roosevelt to do something about the terrible situation regarding these refugees. Through the time of the meeting after Kristallnacht, until the voyage of the St. Louis in May to June 1939, some 5,000 to 6,000 additional Jewish refugees found safe haven in Cuba. Then, however, there was an anti-Semitic backlash in Cuba against the admission of additional Jewish refugees. It was that backlash that resulted in the Cuban government denying admission to Cuba of some 900 plus passengers on the St. Louis who held valid Cuban tourist visas. The St. Louis never would have been sailing to Havana Harbor in the first place if not for the initiatives of the Roosevelt administration that had made Cuba a destination for refugees. When the passengers were turned away, the ship captain sailed along the coast of Florida. Some say the Coast Guard was monitoring the ship to keep it from landing. We found, however, and the transcripts survive to this day, that in fact the Treasury Secretary Morgenthau intervened with the Coast Guard to have them track the ship because negotiations were underway to find other safe havens for the passengers. They couldn't land in the United States anyway since they had no valid visas to enter America. Ultimately, safe havens were found in the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and England. Remember, this is the summer of 1939. War had not yet broken out, and the Holocaust was, well in the future. At the time, these were indeed safe havens. Now, had Roosevelt, in violation of the quota laws, let them into the United States, that likely would have antagonized a restrictionist Congress and perhaps undermined his chief foreign policy goal to ease the restrictive neutrality acts. Ultimately, of course, some of these countries where the passengers were dispatched were overrun by the Germans, but contrary to mythology, about 2/3 of the St. Louis passengers survived the Nazi invasions and the Holocaust, and about half of those eventually reached the United States.